So you've got that itty bitty little action camera, and now you're confronted with all the different camera settings. Let me guide you through some of the basic settings of the GoPro Hero 7 Black. This is a Shimano Di2 battery. It looks nothing like a GoPro. Come on, just let me go and get that second camera, please. I'd like to go through some of the basics on the GoPro camera settings. Now, there's some excellent videos out there that highlight the different settings and different recommendations. I'll provide links to some of those in the details below, but I just thought I would quickly touch on some of the basics just to get you started, and maybe some of the specifics, settings and things to think about if you're capturing cycling videos. So the first setting I'd like to touch on is resolution. So if you've got a GoPro Hero 7 Black, you have the option to shoot in 4K. So that's where I started. I shot everything in 4K. I mean, you know, everyone knows bigger is better, right? So 4K has got to be the best. Well, yes and no. So there's a couple of things to consider. How powerful is your computer or your PC? Because those 4K files can be really, really big, and that can be pretty hard to work with. So that's one thing. Secondly, if you're going to be uploading most of your videos to YouTube, 4K is pretty unnecessary, as most of the time people are watching that on a mobile or a tablet device, and it's really only 1080p. And also, in fact, sometimes the 4K video can be detrimental to the video quality because the internet may not be able to keep up with the size of your file, and it may buffer a lot. So that's what I've found. So I'm probably start shooting more at a lower resolution. The video today I'm shooting in 1080p. So when you're playing around with the different resolution settings, that brings us to the second important GoPro setting, and that is the field of view. The GoPro Hero 7 line of cameras gives you three different options for field of view, and they are linear, wide, and super wide. Now, I guess you can probably imagine the difference between those. Linear is the most natural looking. The video today is all being shot in linear, whereas when you start to get to some of the wider angle, they can have a bit of a fisheye effect on the camera, on the picture, and it can look a little bit funny sometimes. So I tend to try and use the linear field of view as much as possible. I think it gives the most natural picture. I tend to save the wider angle for when I'm trying to capture more of a submersive environment. Sometimes the trick with the super wide is if you can see if there's a clear horizon, it'll probably look a little bit funny, but if you can't really see the horizon in the picture, you can get away with it. Just sometimes the trees on the edge of the picture tend to bend around a little bit, and that can look a little bit funny. Unfortunately, the linear is not available in 4K. Damn you, GoPro. Linear field of view is only available in 2.7K or 1080p. Let me give you some examples of how the different fields of view look like. This is the linear field of view on the GoPro. It's in 1080p as well. And now this is the 4K wide. So this is what the wide looks like. So the middle ground. I don't know, see what you think. So now I've switched to the super view, the super view field of view. And as I said, that's only available in the higher resolution. So now this is in 4K. So this is 4K super view. So I'm not sure what you think this looks like, but that's the super view. So you can play around with the field of view as well. And just remember that not all of the fields of view are available in all resolutions. So linear is not available in 4K. And finally, we have the third major camera setting, and that is the frames per second, or FPS, if you're a gamer. Okay, so it's generally accepted that 24 frames per second will give you that, cinematic feel, that bit of motion blur. Now, today I'm filming everything at 24 frames per second. What I've found is that the frames per second you choose will dictate the feel or the style of your video. If you're trying to create something that's a bit cinematic, maybe cruising along Beach Road with your friends with some nice background music and some shots of you at the cafe, and those sorts of things, then maybe 24 frames per second is your best bet. If you're filming more like documentary style of content, then you might want to up the frame rates a little bit, maybe to 30 or 60 frames per second. For example, if you're shooting a video of a crit race, I think 24 frames per second might be a bit slow, and it might look a bit too blurry, and it might not capture all of the action. So it might look better if you up your frames per second, maybe up to 30 or 60 frames per second. Here are some sample footage that I filmed at some different frames per second so you can see the effect. Now, in all three of the videos, I tried to keep my speed consistent to about 33 or 34 kilometers per hour. Now, I think that this is an important consideration for us cyclists as well, is how fast you plan to ride. I think that 24 frames per second, I think if you're going much faster than 35k an hour, I think that 24 frames per second is a bit slow and it looks a bit too blurry. As you're starting to pick up the speed, I think 60 frames per second will work a lot better, and maybe the middle ground might be the 30 frames per second. So maybe if your speeds are getting up over 35 kilometers per hour, you might want to consider using 30 frames per second. If faster than that, you probably want to run at 60 frames per second. But yeah, that'll just let you see a bit of that'll let you see the differences yourself. But yeah, cruising along Beach Road, 24 frames per second is probably fine. Going up hills at my speed anyway, 24 frames per second is fine too. The GoPro will also go up to 120 or even 240 frames per second as well, which is really, really good if you want to capture some of that slow motion footage. But you just need to be careful or conscious that the hyper smooth stabilization in the GoPro is not available in all combinations. For example, the really fast frame rates, you don't get the hyper smooth, so it's going to be really, really unstable, and you just have to be really, really careful using that option. Another cool feature of the GoPro Hero 7 Black is the time warp and time lapse feature. They are really good. You can have a lot of fun with those and capture some different content if you'd like to fast forward some sections. So they're the main GoPro settings to get you started. The general settings that I like to use also are as follows. Firstly, turn on your Pro Tune, so you'll be able to make some of these other changes. I generally set my white balance to 5500K. I set my maximum ISO to 100, and the sharpness, set that to low or medium. The high can be a little bit too strong. For color, I go with GoPro color, but I don't do much color grading in post. So if you're a bit more advanced and want to get into the color grading, you might like to turn off the GoPro color as well. Well, that covers off the basic camera settings of the GoPro Hero 7 Black that I've explored and played with so far. Please comment below if there's anything else that I may have missed, or if you have any questions I can answer. Now go out and start creating some awesome cycling content and share your life with the world. Personally, I'd love to see what videos you create. So until next time, GoPro stop recording. So that I'm gonna kill that dog.